My recommendation personally is movement in some way, shape, or form. 10 minutes, 15-minute walk, push-ups, jumping jacks, something that gets you moving. Are going to impact your mind, impact your physical, kind of your launch sequence from a either nutrition or fitness perspective that gets it going.
Own the morning, win the day. You know what I'm saying?
That's right. Own the morning, win the day.
Welcome to Limitless Minds, the podcast where curiosity meets greatness. Each week, co-hosts DJ Eitzen and Harry Wilson sit down with some of the most exceptional individuals across sports, business, and beyond. From world-class athletes and peak performance coaches to visionary CEOs, entrepreneurs, and influential authors, they dive deep into the stories and strategies that drive extraordinary success. If you're ready to discover what it takes to be truly limitless and push beyond your own limits, you're in the right place.
Welcome back to another Limitless Minds podcast episode. It's Harry Wilson and DJ Eitzen. It's just us today. Listen, man, I got up this morning early, as I typically do for this work, for my workout. I work out at Orange Theory. Shout out to my OTF family. It's May mayhem. So this time of year, every year, May, they call it all out mayhem, right? And which just means they're gonna kick your ass, and the workouts that are already hard are a little bit harder. And I was exhausted. It's been 4 days in a row, right? So I was kind of exhausted. I was talking to Courtney, my wife, about it this morning, and she was like, and she doesn't buy the early wake up stuff, right? Like she doesn't want any part of anything before. I mean, early, 6:45, I think, is when her alarm goes off. I think that's still early generally, but like she's not buying the before the sun rises, wake up, right?
Right.
So my alarm goes at 5:45. She hears it, but she rolls over. I get up, hit feet at the floor, and then kind of get out my day. But it got me thinking, DJ, like, I see on social media a lot, all the gurus that are out there, the influencers, if you will, some names that we would know. I'm not trying to dog anybody out, so I won't say any names, but like,
that's right.
We have all these experts and gurus that talk about like getting up at 3 a.m. and all the things you can do in your first 2 hours of the day to like beat the competition, and in fact, the competition's not even out there. The competition's only yourself, and all these different things, right? And I think there's a lot of people that roll their eyes at like the early morning wake up, right? And the different stats you see about all the great CEOs or founders or people that that make money and how early they wake up, right?
That's right.
And
that's right.
And I want to talk about this a little bit, right? Because to me, it's less about what time I wake up and more about my routine, and having like a plan that works for me, that I can kind of that can really get me kick started, right? But like one myth I want to see if there's a reason to bust or not is is waking up at 5 a.m. or you name the early ass time, whatever, 4 a.m. is waking up at 5 a.m. Actually, is that a flex? Is that something to brag about, or is that just bad sleep hygiene?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, and the first thing I would tell you, the first thing I would say is it depends at what stage of your life you're in, because when I didn't have kids, you read those books, and to get up at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. or whatever it is, was much more feasible from the standpoint of like, I could go to sleep at 9 o'clock or whatever time and still get a good night's sleep, and get up at 4 o'clock and 4:45 or whatever it is in the morning. I think when you add different life circumstances in, like kids or a wife or whatever, that there's things that are still going on into the evening that if I decided I want to go to sleep at 8 o'clock at night, I'm going to miss. And for me personally, I'm not willing to miss that for, to be able to put up a post or flex or whatever, or even just say, So that for me personally, but like, so I'm in a season of life right now where I want to see my kids in the morning at, for breakfast. I want to be able to drive my son to school and drop him off at 8 a.m. There's certain things that I want to be able to do in the morning. I read, there's certain things I eat and drink in the morning. And so, and that all can happen, during, much later than 4 o'clock in the morning now. But when my kids are out of school and they're out of the house, maybe 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, wake up and do all the routines and things of that nature become more feasible for me. To me, it's more about, I need 8 hours of sleep, and to be able to get those 8 hours of sleep, I have to go to sleep at a certain time, and I need to wake up at a certain time.
So you think you regularly get 8 hours? You think you get 8 hours?
Yeah, I get between 7 and 8 hours of sleep.
Kudos to you. So that means, what time are you sleep and what time are you waking up?
Yeah, so I'll typically go to bed around 11. And typically I'm getting up between 6 and 7 because I don't have to drop Isaiah off or Mari off until 8. So, so like me going to sleep, much earlier now, and is not, then like 9 or 10 o'clock. It's really not. I don't need to at this point. And so when
you sleep, do you sleep sound? Like, are you out cold until that alarm, or maybe you might even set an alarm at this point? I know like our body clocks are like, so regular.
Yeah.
But like, because I don't, depending on the day and health wise and various things, if I'm not, sick or anything like that, I don't, when I'm sleeping well, and this, my version of sleeping well is first time I wake up, it's about the same time every day, around that 3:45 a.m. And I wake up and because I got to go to the bathroom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've been drinking water, or just because I'm getting old, right? But like I got to go to the bathroom, and then depending on what's going on in my everyday life, like sometimes those thoughts start creeping in my head, and so it's hard to get back to sleep. When there's not those additional stressors, I can kind of hit back to sleep. But that alarm hits at 5:45. But I admire people that really do get 8 hours, because I think that sleep might be, there's all these kind of foundational pillars to, like, being fit and healthy and well and, joyful and all these different things. And sleep has got to be like one of those core principles, because if you don't sleep well, it's going to impact how you the choices you make from a nutrition perspective, typically.
True.
Right. Those choices you make from a nutrition perspective are going to impact, a number of areas: energy,
mood,
certainly weight, mood, right?
Cognitive,
and then those things impact your performance at work. When your performance at work isn't great, it creates stress, which then is a cycle, because that probably doesn't help you sleep well, right? And so, like, sleeping is massive. But like you mentioned it, man, like, kids or no kids. In our case, we have kids, dude. Like, we got kids from you and I have kids. How many kids? 8 kids between the two of us, between 7 and 17 years old. So from field hockey, travel and practice and carpools, to soccer and track, to you got a son that's playing rugby. Like, you might not be home until 9:30.
That's what it is.
Just getting back to the crib. That's
what it is. Right.
So it's tough. And so, but I think that,
and then time with Jess and Courtney, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, like I enjoy that time 10 to 11 usually with Jess, where it's just like we can talk and catch up on the day and just like, connect. But because, if I don't get that, if I'm like, you know what, I got to get my sleep because I got to get up and, and do the grind, whatever it is, like, I would be missing out on a ton and that has changed, man. If we did this podcast 5 years ago, my sleep patterns 3 years ago, 5 years ago, they consistently flex. And again, it's dependent on what's going on, in our lives.
Well, I think my perspective on, like, the question of it's 5 a.m. is like the 5 a.m. wake up, or that early morning 2 hours ahead of everybody else in the world wake up. Is that a flex or not? Well, I think it depends on how you use it, right?
Yep.
And also what you did ahead of that. In other words, like, how you fed yourself the day before when you went to sleep to get as close to optimal amount of hours as possible. If you've gotten your 6 to 8 hours of sleep and you had a good meal the night before, then I think it is a flex to be able to wake up early and be able to kind of get more done in the 24 hours that you have, assuming that that's what you're doing. But I think the critical thing is less about being an early morning waker upper, and doing all the things, but just having the morning routine, whether it's at 5 a.m. or 8 a.m., having a morning routine. I mean, there's some data that we were checking out. I think Willow's Healthcare, this is where this is at, and we'll link it in the notes. But people who follow a morning routine are 2 times more productive, twice as productive, twice as productive. So regardless of when, it's what, like what are you doing in that kind of critical first hour to 2 hours of your morning, first 30 minutes, maybe it's first 10 minutes. Like, what is that routine? Because in that same study, a 10-minute morning mindset check-in, which is amazing, right? That touches what we do. A 10-minute morning mindset check-in reduces daily stress by 27%. So, we'll talk about some strategies, like what kind of morning mindset check-ins are we talking about? Like, what is that, right? What can that be? We'll talk about that. But then, and then the other piece of that I think was interesting is 92% of high performers have a personal, quote unquote, launch sequence to start their day. So I'm curious to get your take on what a launch sequence is. But so, I mean, I think that's critical. So, I mean, like, what are some of the things that you do in the morning and whenever that is?
Yeah. So I start out and, I take a shower in the morning, cold shower.
Good.
And
Good. I'm glad
ice cold shower though. Like that's one of the things I've been doing that for 1.5 years now. And Jess always makes fun of me because, I'm like, I haven't been sick in 1.5 years, that's my flex. Right. But she's like, yeah, right. Okay. But I honestly, I feel really, really healthy.
But you can't see. You can't see.
That
cold shower doesn't help your sight.
True. It doesn't help my eyesight. That's a very good point. But that cold shower, it wakes me up. It's something that I start out the day with a little bit of uncomfortableness, right, and adversity for whatever that means, but then after I do that, get dressed, go downstairs, hot water with lemon. And I go to my, right to my chair, and that's where I do my reading. I do pick up my readers, my glasses, and I read, and I set an intention and do a little prayer, before I start my day. Then I get a cup of coffee, and then Jess and I, as the kids are kind of getting ready, typically we'll have she'll make eggs or whatever, and I'll eat something with high protein in the morning. And then I'll take Amari to school, and then we start our day. But that's my typical kind of morning routine. I will say, the one thing I will say too, and I just add this, is that somewhere in between the reading and my first business interaction, we'll set in the gratitude channel or that we have on Google Chat. I'll put what I'm thankful for. So, starting out with gratitude, my work day there, I think has been something that's been super helpful and something I've added in over the last, 7 years that we've been doing this business. So that's my routine.
You ever miss on the routine? Like, are there ever times where maybe you don't do it? You can't do it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There are times where I miss, in a rush, preoccupied. There's different things. I rarely miss unless I'm in so when I was in Houston this weekend, and sometimes I'll get excited because I know I'm going to Houston or Orlando in the summer. You say, why would you get excited about that? Because when you put cold water in a shower at a hotel in Houston or Orlando, it's really not that cold. So I'm like, I didn't have to do a cold shower this morning, but it just shows you how so I'll miss it, when I'm on the road like that. But then, like I said, there's just some times where, you get preoccupied and I don't read or I don't pray or whatever it is. And, I can look back on those days and typically they're a little bit more challenging. My mood, my energy, my outlook on things is I just don't have nearly quite the perspective I have when I do complete my routine, and the mornings I do complete it. So but I do miss.
Yeah. I mean, my routines, they've evolved and they kind of continue to evolve, because maybe it's because I'm always I'm susceptible to finding the next thing to try and to do, and then and shifting it. I do think that our bodies become so accustomed to our habits that, especially things around fitness and nutrition, that our bodies begin to adapt. And then those benefits that might have been there months ago or a year ago or whatever it are, the benefits change, or as those benefits are impacting us, our bodies or our minds shift and kind of require a different set of strategies to kind of take the next step. And so I'm really subscribed to kind of like, finding different ways to evolve those routines as I evolve. But one thing that I think that rings true for me regardless is movement in the morning. If I am going to skip a workout, or maybe not even skip, but just take a rest day from a early, like a 6:15 in the morning workout, I always feel like I still need to do something in the morning. So it's like a 15-minute walk with the dog, right? Just to feel like I did something, or 100 push-ups, right? Something just to get the blood flowing. And so blood flow, movement, I think, is a big part of my routine on a typical day. And I'm typically at home, 5:45, wake up, brush teeth, do the thing, get out the door, go to Orange Theory, hour class, burn 800, 1,000 calories, get home. I get home. I got it set up nicely where I can get home and still still help the kids, like either fix a quick breakfast or take them to school. So I don't miss that.
That's
right?
good.
And then to work and head on, because I just know I'll miss that movement in the evenings if I don't do it in the day.
That's right.
Because things are getting crazy in the afternoon and evenings with the kids. So
how many hours of sleep do you typically get then?
If I'm being completely honest,
because you're getting up pretty early, right?
Yeah, I'm getting up pretty early, 5:45, but I'm usually in bed by 10:30. The problem is, and this is where I got to get better, the technology remains in my hand oftentimes.
Okay.
And those like when you're kind of just decompressing, you're sitting there and the phone's sitting in my hand. And so you scroll, you're looking at emails, or you're doing whatever. And I really want to get better at like trying to, putting that down or keeping it out of the room or something. And I've tried different things and I just haven't been good at being disciplined around it. But like, want to be able to like, because I've read some stuff that, you should put down the technology 2 hours before, you're actually trying to sleep.
I have too. Yeah.
That's like the one time I have to actually look at it. But so I got to make a decision in my mind on, and kind of be decisive there. But because of that, I'm probably not really getting to sleep until 11:30, ish. Certainly before midnight, 11 to midnight. So if I'm making it at 5:45, I'm getting probably I'm probably getting 5 to 6,
Okay.
And that's if it's disrupted, right? If it's not disrupted. So, I think that, but there's one of my rest days where I don't wake up for, for that early morning wake up, I'll sleep until 7, and, so those days I might get a little more extra sleep, but so, I definitely need to get better with the sleep, because, like I said, I think it's just a critical kind of fundamental component of all these other things that optimize performance.
We were talking about my eyesight, and it was like, I don't know, 43, 44 years old. Like all of a sudden, started being like, kind of couldn't see. And it's like, and the same thing with my sleep. I used to be able to get away with, 5 hours and 30 minutes is like, that was always kind of like if I can get that much, I can be fairly productive during the day. Anything less than that, I stalled it. And now it's more like I'm probably at like the 6.5 hour that I really need before I start to see that cognitively, I just don't think as clear. I'm not as sharp, that my energy's whack. Like, so it's like, but it's funny, like, it's fun just how your body changes and what you need now versus what I needed before. And sleep has been one of those things where I was kind of like it was almost like a badge of honor to be able to be like, you know what, like I only need, I get up at whatever time and but I was seeing that my performance I was struggling in terms of the way I thought. So I don't know.
I love it, man. I think as we close, I think that some action items for folks as far as that 10-minute morning mindset check-in or way to like launch sequence your day. You mentioned a couple of things that I think are really smart. Gratitude, right? Finding some way, whether it's just internally self-talk, to like think about gratitude. I think if you want to level that up, I think you share gratitude. So whether it be with your team at work, whether it be with your family, whether it be with a wife or spouse or partner, even if there's somebody that you are thinking about relative to being grateful, like ping them, text them, some expression of gratitude to start your day.
I love that.
Whether it's in the first 10 minutes or whether it's just kind of part of a launch sequence in the first, couple hours of your morning. By the way, water. I think water, even though that's more of a
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to call that a mindset check-in, but I think it
Yep.
is. Like I would call it,
Yep.
because hydration, when because a lot of times we think we're hungry, we're really dehydrated, and
True.
many of us that like coffee tend to make that pot of coffee that's the
Mm.
very first thing they do, and that's the first thing they're putting in their body. Hydrate. I think we should be drinking at least an ounce of water per pound of body weight that we are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if I'm 200 pounds, I should be probably drinking 200 ounces of water in a day. I should be getting probably
Right.
about 25% of that in the first 2 hours of my day.
Mm.
Ideally before coffee, but certainly having some portion of that 25% before I sip on a black coffee or whatever. And so that's one piece I would recommend. I think, and then for me, my recommendation personally is movement in some way, shape, or form. 10 minutes, 15-minute walk, push-ups, jumping jacks, something to get you moving. Are going to impact your mind, impact your physical, kind of your launch sequence from a either nutrition or fitness perspective that gets it going. So
that's good, man. Love it. Love it. Yeah. I mean, I think that, hey, own the morning, win the day. You know what I'm saying?
That's right. On the morning, win the day. And remember, you don't have to be sick to get better. See you next time.